Which one is it?
It has a little red dot by it.
ADMU?
Yeah.
There we go. There's a common saying that money is power, and in today's political environment, this can be all too true. This phrase and this year's presidential election led me to research the effects that corporate money can have on these political elections. In any political campaign, candidates receive public funding to help fund their campaigns because, frankly, any bit helps. However, many times candidates also receive sizable contributions from large corporations who are lobbying for specific legislation or policy, of which they are a primary beneficiary the vast majority of the time. This is why it should be illegal for politicians to accept campaign contributions from corporate lobbyists. Today I will explain how accepting these contributions can contribute to corrupt government, undermine the best interest of the nation, and encourage money over argument. First, accepting campaign contributions from corporate lobbyists can contribute to corrupt government. Some politicians often accept or often are bought into office by large corporations, and people known as kingmakers donate funds and organize the events and elections to make this happen. Notorious Republican kingmaker of the late 1800s, Mark Hanna, is quoted as saying, "There are two things that are important in politics. The first is money, and I can't remember the second one." This can keep politicians in their pockets for potential favors. A similar example comes in the form of Theodore Roosevelt before he was president. Before he was president, Roosevelt was actually helped into the vice presidency in order to hide him. In an article published by the Miller Center at the University of Virginia, it explains that when Roosevelt was governor of New York, political bosses didn't want him interfering with their political machine, and which also was receiving corporate funding, and those corporations and companies did not want to lose their money, and the political machine, they didn't want it to crash or anything. So they came up with the idea to kick him upstairs to the vice presidency. They rigged the Republican convention, so it was virtually impossible for Roosevelt not to be nominated. And although Roosevelt wasn't necessarily bought into office, the whole plot was for financial gain and corrupt political purposes as of the New York political machine. And this leads into my next point, that accepting campaign contributions from corporate lobbyists undermines the best interest of the nation and the American people. Instead of being concerned with politics and the state of the country, corporations lobby for candidates that will most benefit their own financial gain and interest. And corporations also lobby for politicians so that they themselves can influence government policy rather than allowing policies that favor the nation as a whole. Here we can see, according to CNN Money, the top 10 lobbying companies since 2009. At the top, you'll see the 10th highest spender in Pfizer at just around $80 million since then, and General Electric has done the most at $135 million. And notice how these are not government agencies like a medical association or anything. These are just large corporations and companies. And according to Tim LaPira, a political science professor at James Madison University, who explains why many companies actually contribute towards political campaigns and policy. He says that if you invest long-term, you have the lobbyists on the ground who are in the know, building relationships with policymakers, agency representatives. When something comes up that affects their business planning, they're in a good position to act. So this explains why these companies are lobbying in these government affairs. Now on to my third point, that accepting these campaign contributions from corporate lobbyists encourages money over argument. Political races, they often turn to a case where who has the most money rather than who has the better argument or plan. Candidates can often fall out of the race simply because they can't afford to compete with competitors who are receiving corporate funding. As reported in a New York Times article, in the 2003-2004 presidential election, Senator John Kerry borrowed $6.4 million against his own house to fund his political campaign. And with the amount of necessary advertising required to promote a candidate, money is an invaluable tool. However, this should not be the deciding factor of who wins a race just because one candidate cannot stay in the running. In conclusion, it should be illegal for politicians to accept campaign contributions from corporate lobbyists. It contributes to corrupt government, the undermining of the nation's best interest, and the encouragement of money over argument. Theodore Roosevelt once stated that it is necessary that laws should be passed to prohibit the use of corporate funds directly or indirectly for political purposes. It is still more necessary that such laws be thoroughly enforced. The people of the United States of America do not deserve a government run by large corporations who have political officials in their pocket. They deserve officials who are elected fairly and without major financial influence. Because in the end, the one thing that truly matters is the state of this great nation and the people who are part of it.